but you come forward a little bit so you can see. So King Herod was a king between the year 37 to 4, king of Judea, BCE. So King Herod was appointed to be king by the Romans, okay? And the Roman period started here, 63 BCE. It started here when the Romans took over this place. Before the Romans were here, there were the Maccabees, okay? That's the last time there was independence. Then the Romans took over, and they appointed King Herod to be the king of Judea. Now, we talked a little bit about King Herod, but he's one of the most fascinating characters during that period of time. We already talked about the massacre of the little kids, the little babies in Bethlehem. But King Herod was actually born here. Okay, he was born here. His family were the Edomites. They were from Edom, which is on the other side of the valley. And his family converted into Judaism. Now he wanted the Jews to like him, and he wanted the Romans to like him, and he wanted the non-Jews to like him. So he had a lot of issues in his life, and he was also very paranoid. He was really scared of his life. So anyone that he was afraid that's going to take over him, he took them out. And as basically eliminated most of the Jewish leadership and the religious Jewish leadership, and preparing the kind of like background or the ground towards what's going to happen in the future. He killed both of his sons. And they said that it's better to be a corpse in his place than to be his sons. And why? Because he was Jewish. He was a converted Jew, but he was Jewish. So he did not eat pork, but his sons he did kill. Do you think the Jews liked him or did not like him? Not so much, okay? Why? Because, again, he was not from the family of David. He was a converted Jew. He was appointed to be by the Romans. So overall, not the best, but he did want them to like him. He did want him to like, that they would like him. So what did he do? First of all, remember I told you he took a wife from the Maccabees? And Miriam. And you remember I told you that even he killed her as well. He was so sick after that he persecuted the Jews. Not only that, he's the one that renovated the Second Temple for the Jews as well. During his time, there was religious freedom. During his time, people had work. He was a bit of a dictator, and he built a lot. They say he was the great builder, and they say if you haven't seen the temple, you've never seen the most beautiful building in your life. So I don't know how you think about him. What do you think about him? Is he good? Is he bad? Is he evil? Is he hard? Is this? He was a very strong figure in this area. Now, obviously, he's the one that actually the Maccabees had a little bit of something here, but the majority of what you're going to see was built by his time. Why here? Why in the desert? There are actually 6 fortresses around the desert that he renovated or built. And why? Again, remember I told you he was a bit paranoid. So this place was a place of refuge. This was not a city. This is not Caesarea. This is not Beit Shean. Okay, this is a king's fortress. Not only a fortress, this is a winter palace. So obviously it was not here during the summer. It is unbearable to be here at 8 o'clock. You already want to get off. He was here during the winter. He did invite people over here from Rome to see the magnificent, architecture around here, and a place of refuge that he obviously takes about an hour and a half to drive to Jerusalem. Think about the cliffs, think about how far it is, and all that. And he made this the most beautiful palace that you can think about, the fortress, in the most highest standard, and we'll see that when we walk around the side. King Herod dies at -4, and for about 7 years, from -4 to the year 66, that means 70 years, there was a small Roman unit on Masada. It was not a big Roman unit on Masada. What happened in the year 66? I mentioned it a few times. The rebellion, very good. The Jews decided to rebel against the Romans. The big rebellion of the Jews against the Romans started in the year 66. Actually, the trigger started in Caesarea, and at the beginning was in the Galilee. Remember, I talked about Magdala, eventually reaching to Jerusalem. Here, what happened, there was rebels, we call them the rebel or the Jewish zealots. They heard about Masada, they knew about Masada, they knew that there was food, ammunition, and especially water. Okay, you can fortify yourself pretty well here. So they came here, and in the year 66, they took over Masada. Yeah? They took from that small Roman unit, so Herod is already gone. Okay? And 7 years later, bless you, they take over Masada, and for 4 years, the Jews rebelled against the Romans. All they wanted, was freedom. They had enough of these Romans. There was lots of tension between the Jews and the non-Jews. There was tension with the governors, because King Herod, during his time, nobody rebelled, but after that came the governors. You remember, like Pontius Pilate, they came from Rome. Herod was born here. This was his baby. He invested So the prefects or the governors didn't really care about this place, economic stability, not so much. And eventually, boom, 4 years, a big rebellion of the Jews against the Romans. What happened in the year 70? The destruction of the Second Temple. The most cultural, historical, religious place for the Jewish people was destroyed. By the way, until today there is a fast. We fast 5 times a year. Jews fast five times a year. One of the fasts is for the destruction of the first temple and the second temple. A day of a fast to remember the temple. Let me just tell you a side story, because Napoleon went into a synagogue. He was in the 18th century. And he went to a synagogue on the same day of the fast when the temple was destroyed. And they see the Jews, they're sitting on the floor and they're crying, they're crying, they're crying. So what are you crying about? And they said, oh, we're crying over the temple that was destroyed. They said, when? When was it destroyed? 30, 50, 100 years ago? And they said, 1,800 years ago. And he goes, seriously? Like, you're crying over this, something that happened so long ago. And then the coin dropped. You know how the coin dropped? And he understood. For people that remember their past, people that go back to the roots, people that know where they're coming from, these people will have future. And this is why you guys are also here in the land of Israel to figure out your roots. When your roots are strong, you know where you're going. You're here not because you're just tourists, and I know you take a lot, but not just because of that, because you're really here to discover your roots here and your identity. When your roots is strong, your identity is much stronger. And I'm sure when you go back home, your identity, your Christian identity will be even more stronger when you follow in the footsteps of Jesus in the Holy Land. Well, that's a slide. So the temple is destroyed, 70 AD, the most important place. And for 3 years, okay, after 3 years, in the year 73, Masada falls. 3 years later. So in Masada, on the night of that Masada fell, there were 960 Jews here in Masada, because after the temple was destroyed, many refugees came here. And 3 years later, that's a long time, you know, and the Romans came here. We don't know exactly how many, because we don't know the number, no one says, but they think between 8,000 and 10,000, 12,000 with slaves and arms and everything. Let's say 10,000 Romans. 10,000 Romans for 960 Jews. Boo-hoo. What's the big story? Why? They built 8 camps surrounding Masada. We're going to see those camps. They built a siege wall surrounding Masada. They built a Roman ramp, not from this side, but from the other side, in order to conquer Masada. And eventually, about 5 months later, since the winter of 72, they came here in the winter of 72, and around the spring of 73, Masada falls. And obviously, you heard also in the film, what did they do at the end? They committed suicide. Now, does that really happen or not? That is the big question. Did it happen or not? We will talk about it, okay? How do we know about the story of Masada? Exactly, Josephus Flavius. Josephus Flavius tells us about the story of Masada. He is the only source of what happened here in Masada. Okay, he's the only one that wrote about Masada. So we take that story and he tells us that they decided to commit suicide. Okay? At the end, I'll tell you that it doesn't really matter if they did or they didn't, but this is the only source that we have, so that's why we rely on, and this is where we tell the story. It could be that they didn't, it could be that they still fought, it could be that they did commit suicide, maybe he told us only parts of the story, but we'll get to the end. And why is there a big symbol here on Masada about the Jews fighting against the Romans? Masada is a World Heritage Site. It's because of 2 reasons. First of all, it's the most preserved siege wall camp around the world. Why is it so preserved? Because we're in the middle of the desert, there's no humidity, so it was just basically abandoned. And the second reason why it's a World Heritage Site, because it tells a story. And especially the story of the Jews that want to be free, and the story of another nation, especially the Romans, here that oppressed the Jews, and all they wanted is independence. And we'll get to the end of the story and the climax, and I'll explain to you the symbol of this place towards the end. So what we're going to do, thank you, Michael.